Let me ask you something simple. When was the last time your birthday actually meant something to you? Not just receiving a few messages or saying thank you, but feeling it the way your younger self did. Remember the excited rhythm in your chest at the sight of cake, the sound of gift wrap, the warmth of being the center of attention for one small day. Now consider how that same day looks in adulthood. It arrives, passes, and barely leaves a trace. You wake up, you check your phone. Maybe a few notifications come in. Maybe your mom remembers. Maybe no one does. You laugh it off. You tell your co-workers you don't celebrate. You say it's not important. But is that really true? Because behind that calm exterior, there is often a quieter emotional story. People who downplay their birthday are not emotionless. Often they are deeply reflective. They have learned to lower expectations because experience taught them how disappointment feels. Psychologically, birthdays are mirrors. They reflect how we feel about visibility, about presence, about being known. When someone says they do not care about birthdays, what they might mean is they have stopped expecting to be acknowledged. That gap between no longer needing and no longer hoping is significant. Some individuals truly find peace in routine. They do not need decorations to feel joy. To them, life itself has become the celebration. But others experience something more fragile. Birthdays bring anxiety. Not because of aging, but because of memory. Perhaps they once cared too much and were hurt when their hopes were unmet. So instead of saying, "I hope someone remembers," they say it is just another day. It is not apathy, it is protection. This is emotional self-preservation. When emotional pain becomes repetitive, the brain adapts by reducing the risk. It lowers expectations to preserve balance. That is not weakness. It is intelligence. The brain prioritizes stability over surprise when past surprises brought pain. But protection can have unintended effects. It can dull the experience of joy. You begin moving through your life like a guest instead of a participant. People say they do not care, but later they remember who did not message them. Even silence holds meaning. Even pretending not to care reveals that you once did. This is known as avoidant validation. It is when someone convinces themselves they do not need attention because they fear it may not come. This usually develops in people who were taught their emotional needs were too much, so they learned to ask for nothing. That is why emotionally independent people are often quietly hopeful. They seem detached but still crave acknowledgement. They just do not say it out loud. Birthdays carry symbolic weight. They are the one day that does not require achievement. They are about existing, and that is powerful. Some people feel gratitude. Others feel a quiet emptiness. Some feel both. It is a blend of nostalgia and numbness. Birthdays stir thoughts of time. They remind us how much has happened and how much has not. That is why many adults keep their birthday quiet. If I do not make it meaningful, it will not feel like another year slipping away. But even if we say nothing, the brain keeps track. Not of age, but of meaning. That is the hidden psychology behind birthdays. It is not avoidance, it is adaptation. It is the mind's way of staying grounded when celebration no longer feels safe. Some people genuinely grow out of birthday excitement, not because they are sad, but because they have found peace in simplicity. They have learned to find meaning in quiet mornings and ordinary routines. For them, celebration is not confined to a specific date. It is woven into daily moments. But for others, birthdays carry emotional complexity. They might trigger a subtle tension that has little to do with age. It may be a memory that resurfaces, or the echo of an old disappointment. Perhaps they once wished too strongly and were left hurt. So they now say it is just another day. It is not denial. It is self-preservation, wearing a calm disguise. Psychologically, this is the mind adapting to protect itself. Repeated emotional letdowns teach the brain to lower expectations. It is a strategy for avoiding further pain. This process is not a flaw. It is a response rooted in emotional intelligence. The brain seeks stability over thrill when thrill becomes unreliable. But over time, this adaptive shield can also mute joy. The heart that once shielded itself becomes overly cautious. You start moving through your life like an observer. You attend your own days as if they belong to someone else. Smiling politely, participating half-heartedly, but remaining emotionally distant. Many say birthdays mean nothing to them, but they still notice who reached out and who did not. They still remember who forgot. Even those who claim they do not care keep score in silence. Because caring is part of being human. Even pretending not to care is a form of care in disguise. This is known in psychology as avoidant validation behavior. It occurs when someone convinces themselves they no longer seek recognition, not because they truly stopped needing it, but because they are afraid of not receiving it. Often this develops in those who were raised to believe emotional needs were inconvenient, that it was better to ask for nothing than risk being ignored. So when someone treats their birthday like any other day, do not assume they lack feeling. They may have made peace with being let down. They may have replaced anticipation with control, but control comes at a cost. Because beneath that neutral tone, an emotional truth remains. We all want to feel seen, not with extravagant gestures, but with sincerity. Birthdays hold symbolic meaning. They represent our right to exist, not for our accomplishments, not for our roles, but simply because we are alive. And that realization can awaken many feelings. Some feel contentment, some feel invisible, some feel both in one breath. Because birthdays, whether we acknowledge it or not, force us to confront time. They reflect how far we have come and what still feels undone. That is the quiet, psychological trigger that often goes unnoticed. Some use ordinary routines as emotional grounding. They say, if I do not give it too much weight, I will not feel the year slipping past. There is also a cultural shift at play. As children, birthdays are social events. They mark belonging and connection. As adults, that attention can feel foreign. There is often a silent inattention between wanting to be noticed and fearing the exposure of vulnerability. This ambivalence shapes how many people approach their own birthday. Those who grew up being the strong one or the caretaker often internalize the belief that their joy is secondary. They become the ones who remember everyone else's birthday. They give gifts, plan surprises, and show up for others, but forget their own date in the process. With time, their birthday begins to feel irrelevant, not because they lack worth, but because they forgot how to receive. They are unsure how to respond if someone plans something special. It feels awkward, unfamiliar, maybe even undeserved. But that discomfort is not humility. It is emotional exhaustion. Deep inside, they still long to be seen. Not in a loud or public way, but in a way that says someone notices who they have been becoming. That is the paradox of emotional growth. The more self-reliant we become, the harder it is to accept love without suspicion. Birthdays become emotional neutral zones, places where feelings might surface, but are quickly pushed aside by practicality. You say it is fine. Let us just get through the day. But inside, your mind is processing a full spectrum of emotions. Nostalgia, for childhood innocence, grief for lost connections, gratitude for resilience, a quiet craving for simple, unfiltered joy. This is what makes the emotional psychology of birthdays universal. Even if we think we have moved beyond them, part of us remembers how it once felt to be celebrated without hesitation. There is also something deeper that happens around birthdays. Psychologists refer to it as temporal self-awareness. It is the moment when you pause and compare who you are now to who you were a year ago. And that reflection is not always comfortable. For some people, birthdays feel more like mirrors than celebrations. They highlight the space between where we are and where we thought we would be. And rather than face that gap, many choose to let the day pass without attention. But this is not apathy. It is introspection. It is the mind saying, "Give me time to understand myself without the pressure to perform." So if your birthday ever feels strange, as if you should feel something more but do not, that is okay. You are not broken or detached. You are aware. You are aware of how time is moving. You are aware that recognition feels different now. You are aware that the meaning of celebration has changed. Because birthdays are not just about age. They are about meaning. And as we grow older, that meaning becomes more personal. When you were young, your birthday was about being noticed by the world. As an adult, it becomes about noticing yourself. It is less about gifts and more about presence. Less about who shows up and more about how fully you are present in your own life. That shift is subtle, but it explains so much about why adults stop celebrating loudly. Because maybe they are no longer seeking recognition from the outside. Maybe they are learning to honor their own journey. Still, even in that inner peace, there remains a quiet hope. A voice that says, "I wonder if anyone still remembers." That is the paradox of emotional maturity. You can be whole and still want connection. You can be stable and still miss being seen. And that is completely human. Because treating your birthday like any other day does not mean you feel nothing. It means you have come to understand that joy is not something you schedule. It is something you carry with you in the way you live each day. It is a quiet kind of celebration, invisible to others, but deeply real. But here is the deeper truth. People who treat their birthdays like a normal day are not rejecting joy. They are redefining it. They are saying, "I do not need the world's permission to feel good about my life." That shift from external approval to internal alignment is one of the softest signs of growth. Because over time, the things that once made us feel special lose their shine. The parties, the gifts, the social media posts. What begins to matter more is honesty. Did I live this year in alignment with who I want to be? Did I show up when it counted? Did I stay true? For many, a birthday becomes less a party and more a pause. Not because they stopped caring, but because their idea of celebration has changed. Now it might look like a quiet morning, a peaceful walk, a meal they love, no candles, just calm. And that is where culture often misunderstands. We assume silence means emptiness, but silence can mean peace. This connects to a psychological concept called self-unconcordant motivation. When your values and your actions align, the need for external validation decreases. So when someone spends their birthday alone, it is not a sign of apathy. It is a sign of alignment. They are no longer chasing temporary highs. They have replaced them with steady meaning. Yet even in that alignment, emotion still flows underneath. Because some people genuinely enjoy their quiet birthdays, and others secretly wish someone would take the lead. They do not want to organize their own celebration. They want to feel like someone else thought of them. And this is the tension between strength and softness, between independence and intimacy. We all carry it. The longing to be remembered without asking, to be celebrated without feeling needy. This is linked to what psychologists call earned secure attachment. Those who have survived emotional inconsistency often learn to depend only on themselves. But even the strongest people carry the hope that someone will see through their armor, that someone will remember them without a prompt. So birthdays become quiet tests, not spoken aloud, but silently noticed. Who reached out, who did not. And even if we tell ourselves it does not matter, part of us still notices. That is not weakness, that is humanity. Because no matter how self-aware we are, we never lose the need for connection. We simply learn to hide it better. Birthdays also reflect our relationship with time. For some, it feels like growth. For others, pressure. And how we interpret that pressure depends on our past. If the previous year brought fulfillment, birthdays feel like milestones. If it brought confusion, they can feel like reminders of what is still unresolved. That is why many choose to blur the day into the week. It is not denial. It is emotional pacing. The subconscious uses birthdays to take inventory. What has changed? What stayed the same? And that pause can trigger something important. A deeper honesty. Am I still living in a way I recognize? Do I like the story I am writing? And if the answer is unclear, that too is part of growth. Because not every transformation needs to be visible. Some of it happens quietly, in the way we respond differently, in the way we soften, in the way we let go. And that might be the most meaningful form of celebration, when a single day does not need to feel extraordinary, because your life already does. Still, even the most grounded people deserve to feel special, not because they seek attention, but because recognition matters, especially to those who give without asking, the ones who remember everyone else's birthday, the ones who check in first. Sometimes they forget they deserve light too, that it is okay to receive, that they do not have to earn joy. Even the calmest people still need warmth. Even the quietest hearts still want to be seen, not for what they give, but for who they are. That is not weakness, that is love. If you have ever felt a quiet ache on your birthday, a longing without words, you are not alone. That is your heart remembering what it feels like to matter. That is the real point of the day. Not perfection, not performance, just presence. Just being here. So if you spend your birthday in an ordinary way, do not judge yourself. It is not emptiness, it is evolution. You are learning that meaning does not always arrive with noise. But if someone does remember, let them. Let them speak your name. Let them remind you that you are still seen. Because you are, even when the day feels quiet. Even when you say it is just another day. Especially then. That is what growing up is. Learning that celebration does not always need confetti. Sometimes it only needs a pause, a deep breath, a moment of noticing. You do not need to make a wish. You already are one, a living continuation of every version of yourself that made it here. And that is worth honoring. Every single year.